Just more of a comment. I do understand from whatever I heard on the news that police departments, those that can afford it, are now starting to outsource the mental health reviews and things like that. So it's not an in-house, maybe they keep replicating themselves and those issues. So they've now started having HR firms handle the hiring and the screenings. So to try to get a better slate, put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's happening to some extent. And one of the problems, oh yeah, this is I'm glad you brought up the screening and the psych eval. There's apparently the state patrol, even though, they're a great body, there's a psychiatrist there's been some articles on who apparently has passed over a lot of good recruits of color, and there's controversy now whether he should go or should stay or whatever. But one person in an agency can have a real influence, right, in that respect, yeah.
I have a couple of unrelated to each other questions.
I've got a hearing disability.
Oh, okay, a couple of questions that are not related to each other. One is, I seem to have read something about one of the reforms being that police can no longer lie to juveniles, but I don't remember whether that was Washington State versus federal. And so kind of would like to hear more about that, as well as, are there any restraints on police lying to adults?
Oh yeah, there's some, generally not, but yeah, I mean, well, I'll give you an example. I'm a detective interviewing you for a homicide that you and your buddy committed, or we believe you did. So I say, you better fess up. Your buddy's already got a deal on the table. Of course he doesn't, that kind of thing. Or we have DNA, whatever the lie. That's a lie, but that's allowed.
And are there any proposals to change that part of policing?
I'm sorry?
Are there any proposals to change that?
There have been. There haven't been any. There has been. One of the things that arises and you're raising is lying. Unfortunately, at various times, and you could see the lying in the police reports, in the George Floyd and Ellis cases. What do I mean by lying? Gee, this young man who was a pizza delivery guy reads about Manuel Ellis in the paper and says, that's not what I saw, and he had taped it. He said, that's totally what they're saying about what happened, that didn't occur. But for him coming forward with that tape, that's what occurred. That's the official story, that's what happened. Same with, of course, George Floyd. If that young woman, a brave that's pretty brave for anybody, hadn't come forward with that, he would have been another suspect who died in custody in the sense. It was tragic, but he had drugs in his vein, whatever, there would have been that. Yes.
I have a question. So if there is evidence that there's a psychiatrist who hires for the police forces that has been passing by perfectly eligible people of color, what is the controversy? Like, why wouldn't he be immediately fired from his position? Because there's public trust that he is doing his job appropriately, and he hasn't been.
Well, unfortunately, it's up to, and I respect him, the chief of the state patrol to make that decision of whether to change it. He's still, from what I read, pretty much believable. Yes.
So I was thinking that some of the constitutional sheriffs in Eastern Washington have expressed some objections to some parts of the new legislations.
Oh, sure. That's something that's unusual. I'm glad you're bringing that up. Usually, it's like judges. You don't comment on legislation, particularly police. I mean, what we have our divisions in terms of legislature, judges, police. You don't, as a sheriff or chief, if the law is a law, I enforce it. I don't challenge it. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I might want to be. I might think it's but of course the courts will decide that. But you're right, there have been a number of police leaders who have criticized aspects of the law and said, some have said it's unconstitutional, which that's what the courts, that's where we have the division. The courts, it's like, we wouldn't need the courts if the police said, oh, you're a criminal, we're going to take you to jail and keep you there. We have the courts to determine whether you're a criminal, right? And make that on the basis of evidence. So yeah, that's kind of unusual and in some ways unsettling, kind of the politicization of police. It happened a few years ago, and you can help me with the timing, with some gun legislation in Washington State that was a little bit stricter. And boy, the sky is going to fall and everything else. And it's unconstitutional. Of course, the courts have found it constitutional. But that didn't happen. And I would suspect that, in part, at least for some of this, that's the same thing. I mean, there have been cries, the sky's going to fall, we're handcuffed. It's kind of like what happened in the 60s with rights, the Supreme Court of the U.S. establishing just basic rights. Police were upset. And yeah, if you can do anything you want, you know, use a real thick dictionary to beat a confession out, I mean, why would you want to? That's change and constraint, you know, and that's why in a democracy we have the three separate distinct branches, and you know, police can't do anything they want to do. Some nation states, that's true. Yes.
Can you expound a little bit on your justice for our neighbors? Like what kind of...
What is justice for our neighbors?
Yeah, what have you been doing?
Oh, yeah, that's just not part of my talk, but of course I'm always happy that... Pastor Jen Stewart, anybody know her? She was here, anyway, to make a long story short, she led the charge several years ago, went to a conference of pastors and Methodists, found out there were these immigration law clinics out east. And so she came back, geez, I want to do this. And so I said, I want to do it too. So a bunch of us got together and basically we established a nonprofit which provides, you know, basic legal counsel for principally our Latino, Hispanic, we have others, African others, in terms of immigration issues. And the community has been good. We've gotten good funding from different sources. It started about 6 years ago in the basement of a church, and it's going pretty strong now. We have a good young man who is the immigration lawyer. We have staff. We have a great executive director, and it's going well. So we're quite happy with it. And if you want to find out more, go to CWJ Fund, Central Washington Justice for Our Neighbors. It's located actually physically at the Methodist Church.